My name is Anton, 37 years old, and I built my life from scratch as a software developer in Boston. Growing up with a manipulative older brother like Marcus wasn't easy, but I persevered. Somehow, I became the family ATM, the responsible one who bails everyone out when they're in trouble. When Marcus demanded $18,000 for his son's college expenses, I never expected it would lead to overhearing a conversation that would change everything. If you're watching this and have ever been treated like your family's personal bank account, drop a comment about where you're watching from and hit subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see how I finally stood up to my brother's entitlement. To understand why that $18,000 demand hit me so hard, you need to know a bit about my family. We grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Connecticut. Nothing fancy, but we had what we needed. My father Joseph worked as a factory manager for 30 years, providing us with stability but not much emotional support. From early on, it was clear Marcus was his favorite. My mother Evelyn was the balance in our home, making sure I wasn't completely overlooked, but she passed away when I was 15. After that, the favoritism became even more obvious. Marcus is 4 years older than me, and growing up he was the charming one. He could talk his way out of anything. While I was the kid mowing lawns and delivering newspapers to save for college, Marcus was sweet-talking our father into handing over cash. The pattern continued into adulthood. My journey wasn't easy. After Mom died, I worked as a grocery store clerk, a weekend janitor at the local community center, and delivered pizzas in the evenings. I put myself through college at the State University studying computer science. No one paid my tuition. No one bought my textbooks. I graduated with student loans that took 8 years to pay off, but I did it. Meanwhile, Marcus floated through life on his charm. He attended 3 different colleges before dropping out of all of them. Dad paid for each attempt without complaint. Marcus landed jobs through connections, not qualifications, and usually lost them within months. Yet somehow he always landed on his feet. 10 years ago, he married Lauren, whose parents had money. They bought him into their business, set the couple up in a nice house, and Marcus started driving a luxury car. They had Brandon shortly after. For years, Marcus flaunted his lifestyle at family gatherings, subtly mocking my modest apartment and reliable but ordinary car. What Marcus and Lauren didn't show was their mounting debt. They lived beyond even her parents' generous means. Designer clothes, exotic vacations, and a house they couldn't afford. 2 years ago, the marriage fell apart. Lauren's parents pulled their financial support, and suddenly Marcus was struggling. As for me, I built a solid career as a software developer. I worked my way up from entry-level positions to lead developer at a successful tech company. I own a comfortable condo in Boston, take 1 nice vacation each year, and have diligently saved for retirement. I don't live extravagantly, but I'm financially stable, something Marcus has never managed to achieve. My relationship with my family has always been complicated. Despite the unequal treatment, I felt obligated to stay connected. I visit my father every week for dinner. I send birthday and Christmas gifts. I call regularly to check in. But over the past 2 years since Marcus's divorce, the dynamic shifted. The requests started small. Dad needed help with a home repair. Marcus needed a temporary loan to cover rent. I helped because that's what family does, right? But the requests increased in frequency and amount. Marcus borrowed $2,000 for car repairs, but showed up to the next family gathering with expensive new golf clubs. Dad asked for help with medical bills, then took a Caribbean cruise. Still, I convinced myself they needed me, that helping them was the right thing to do. Looking back, I can see I was being manipulated. They knew exactly which buttons to push family loyalty guilt over my relative success, the ghost of my mother who always encouraged us to take care of each other. But I was reaching my breaking point. Then came the phone call that would eventually change everything. Marcus called on a Tuesday morning while I was preparing for an important work meeting. "Anton, we need to talk," he said, his voice carrying that familiar tone that meant he wanted something. "It's about Brandon's future. Can you meet me at Riverside Coffee tomorrow at noon?" I almost said no. I had a deadline approaching. But 15 years of conditioning is hard to break. "Fine," I agreed. "But I only have an hour." I had no idea that meeting would be the beginning of the end of my role as the family bank. The next day, I arrived at Riverside Coffee 5 minutes early. The small cafe was busy with the lunch crowd, a mix of business people and college students from the nearby university. I found a table in the corner and ordered a black coffee, my mind still half focused on the project I'd left at the office. Marcus arrived 15 minutes late, not bothering to apologize. He looked good on the surface, designer sunglasses, expensive watch, hair, perfectly styled, but I noticed the fraying edges of his collar and the scuff marks on his shoes, little signs that his facade was cracking. "Good to see you, little brother," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. He ordered a complicated specialty coffee drink without even looking at the price. After some superficial small talk about the weather and sports, Marcus leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "So Brandon got accepted to Westfield University," he said, beaming with pride as if he'd accomplished something personally. "That's great," I replied, genuinely happy for my nephew. Brandon was a good kid despite his father's influence. Not a stellar student, mostly B's and C's, but he had a good heart. "Is that where he wanted to go?" Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "It's where he needs to go. Their business program has connections. It's all about who you know in this world, Anton." I nodded non-committally, already sensing where this conversation was heading. "The thing is," Marcus continued, pulling out a folder and spreading papers across the table, "the financial aid package isn't great. Brandon needs some help with expenses." The papers were college cost breakdowns. Tuition, housing, meal plans, books, fees, all adding up to an astronomical sum. Marcus had circled several items in red. "These are the pressing ones," he explained, tapping the page. "Dorm fees are $10,000 for the year. He needs a proper laptop for coursework, about $3,000, for the model his program recommends. And the meal plan is another $5,000. I stared at the numbers, adding them up. "That's $18,000. "Exactly," Marcus smiled as if I'd just agreed to something. "I figured you could cover these expenses. Just until I get back on my feet." The casual way he said it, like he was asking to borrow $20 instead of $18,000, left me momentarily speechless. "Marcus, that's a lot of money," I finally managed. "Come on, Anton. It's for Brandon's education, your nephew, family." His voice took on a practiced sincerity. "Besides, you don't have kids of your own, no college funds to save for. You have the extra money." That stung. My lack of children wasn't by choice, but medical circumstance, something Marcus knew but conveniently ignored when it suited his purposes. "There are other options," I suggested. "Community college for 2 years, then transfer. Student loans, work-study programs, scholarships." Marcus's expression darkened. "Community college? Are you serious? Brandon's are not community college material. We're better than that." "There's nothing wrong with community college," I countered. "Many successful people start there." "Like who?" Marcus scoffed. "Like me," I reminded him. "I did my first 2 years at community college before transferring to save money." Marcus rolled his eyes. "And look how long it took you to get where you are. Brandon doesn't have time for that path. He needs to make connections now." The conversation continued in this vein for another 20 minutes. Every alternative I suggested was beneath them. Every financial aid option was too complicated or too demeaning. According to Marcus, the only solution was for me to write a check. "I can't do it, Marcus," I finally said firmly. $18,000 is too much." His charm vanished instantly. "Can't or won't, because we both know you have the money." "Both," I replied. "I worked hard for what I have. Brandon needs to learn some financial responsibility, and so do you." Marcus slammed his hand on the table, causing several nearby customers to look over. "This is how you treat family. After everything we've done for you." That nearly made me laugh. "What exactly have you done for me, Marcus?" He stood up, gathering his papers. "You've always been selfish. Always. Dad was right about you." With that parting shot, he stormed out, leaving me with the bill for his untouched $7 coffee. I sat there for a while, a knot in my stomach. The familiar guilt began creeping in. Was I being selfish? Should I help my nephew? Was I punishing Brandon for his father's behavior? That evening, I called my best friend Derek. We've been friends since college, and he's witnessed the Marcus situation for years. He's manipulating you again, Derek said bluntly after I explained what happened. You're not responsible for Brandon's college expenses. That's his parents' job. But what if Brandon loses this opportunity because of me? I asked. First of all, it's not because of you, Derek countered. It's because his father is financially irresponsible. Second, Brandon has many opportunities that don't require you to bankroll them. Your brother just doesn't want to explore those options because they require effort. Derek's words made sense, but years of conditioning left me wavering. Maybe I should help, at least with part of the expenses. Maybe just the laptop. These thoughts plagued me as I tried to sleep that night, the weight of family obligation heavy on my chest. Little did I know that a chance encounter the following weekend would completely change my perspective on the situation. The following Sunday, I drove to my father's house for our weekly dinner. These visits had become a ritual after my mother passed away, partly out of duty and partly to ensure Dad wasn't completely alone. Usually I arrived right at 6 o'clock when dinner was scheduled. This time I was almost 30 minutes early because a meeting I had anticipated running long ended early. I pulled into the driveway, noticing Marcus's car already there. This was unusual. Marcus rarely attended these dinners unless he wanted something. I approached the house quietly, deciding to enter through the side door that led directly into the kitchen. I thought I might surprise them and help with dinner preparations. As I reached for the door handle, I heard voices through the partially open window. Marcus and my father were in the kitchen, their voices clear in the still afternoon air. He refused to help with Brandon's college, my father was saying, his tone disapproving. Completely, Marcus replied. After everything we've done for him, but don't worry about the money. How will you pay for it, Dad asked. Marcus's next words froze me in place. Don't worry about the money. After Christmas dinner he'll pay. You sure about that? He seemed pretty determined when he called me yesterday. I'm positive, Marcus said confidently. I've got it all worked out. We'll have the whole family there. You'll talk about family legacy and education. Aunt Patty will bring up how Mom would have wanted us to support each other. I'll have Brandon show his acceptance letter. Anton won't be able to say no in front of everyone. There was a pause, and I heard the refrigerator door open and close. That's his role in this family, my father said finally. He owes us. Exactly, Marcus agreed. The kid doesn't have his own family to support. What else is he going to spend his money on? They both laughed, and I felt physically ill. My hand dropped from the door handle as memories flooded back. Marcus borrowing my savings for a class trip when we were teens never repaid. Dad insisting I give up a summer internship opportunity to work at his friend's landscaping business because Marcus had already committed to a vacation with friends. The countless times my achievements were downplayed, while Marcus's minimal efforts were celebrated. I backed away from the door, silently returned to my car, and drove 2 blocks away before pulling over. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. All these years I'd told myself that despite the favoritism, my family valued me as a person. Now I knew the truth. They saw me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. I couldn't face them, not right then. I texted my father that I had a work emergency and wouldn't make dinner after all. His reply was terse, typical, always putting work first. The irony wasn't lost on me. The drive home was a blur of emotions. Hurt gave way to anger, then to a profound sense of betrayal. By the time I reached my condo, a strange calm had settled over me. The clarity of finally seeing the truth was both painful and liberating. I called my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, who lived in Oregon. We weren't particularly close, but she had always been kind to me, and more importantly, she was removed from the immediate family dynamics. Aunt Patty, I said when she answered, can I ask you something candidly? Of course, honey. What's on your mind? Do Dad and Marcus talk about me when I'm not around? About my money specifically? There was a long pause. Why are you asking this now? Please, Aunt Patty. I need to know the truth. She sighed deeply. Anton, I've wanted to say something for years, but it wasn't my place. Your father and brother, they take advantage of your generosity. They always have. How long has this been going on? As long as I can remember, she admitted. Even when your mother was alive, she worried about how they treated you. After she passed, it got worse. Last Thanksgiving, your father was bragging to your uncle about how you paid for his new roof, but then I overheard him tell Marcus it was easy to get the money. Because, and I quote, Anton can't say no if you mention what your mother would have wanted. Each word felt like a physical blow. They're planning to ambush me at Christmas dinner about paying for Brandon's college. That doesn't surprise me, Aunt Patty said sadly. Anton, it's time you stood up for yourself. Your mother never wanted you to be their personal bank account. She wanted you to be respected. After we hung up, I sat in my darkened living room for hours, processing everything. The Christmas dinner was 3 weeks away. They were expecting me to cave under public pressure to write a check just to avoid a scene. For the first time, I saw with perfect clarity that this pattern would never end. There would always be another expense, another emergency, another reason why I owed them. The only way to stop it was to break the cycle completely. As the night deepened, something shifted inside me. The weight of obligation I'd carried for decades began to lift. By morning, I had made my decision. Christmas dinner would indeed be memorable this year, but not in the way Marcus and my father expected. I was done being the family ATM. The next morning, I called in to work and took a personal day. This situation required my full attention. For too long, I'd been reactive with my family, responding to their demands rather than setting my own boundaries. That ended now. First, I called Dr. Rivera, the therapist I had seen briefly, after a stressful project last year. She had availability that afternoon, and I grabbed the slot. Then I sat down at my computer and began researching Westfield University and their scholarship opportunities. What I discovered was interesting. They had several merit scholarships that Brandon might qualify for, plus financial aid options that hadn't been explored. Even more revealing was my discovery about community college transfer programs. The local community college had a guaranteed transfer agreement with Westfield if students maintained a 3.0 GPA. Brandon could complete his first 2 years at a fraction of the cost, then transfer seamlessly into the program his father was so fixated on. I wondered if Brandon even knew about these options. In all our family interactions, Brandon and I rarely had one-on-one conversations. He was always under Marcus's watchful eye. I decided it was time to change that. I found Brandon's number in my contacts list and texted him directly. Hey Brandon, it's Uncle Anton. I'd like to talk to you about college. Can we grab lunch tomorrow? Just the two of us. His response came surprisingly quickly. Sure, Uncle Anton. That would be cool. We arranged to meet at a burger place near his high school the following day. With that plan in motion, I turned my attention back to the broader issue. Dr. Rivera's office was a calm space with soft lighting and comfortable furniture. She remembered me from our previous sessions and listened intently as I detailed the recent events. What you're describing is a classic family pattern, she said when I finished. You've been cast in the role of provider, and your family actively reinforces that role because it benefits them. How do I break the pattern? With clear, firm boundaries, she replied. But be prepared when you establish boundaries with people who aren't used to them. There's often significant pushback. They'll try guilt, anger, even bringing in other family members to pressure you. We spent the next hour discussing specific strategies for the Christmas confrontation. Dr. Rivera suggested I prepare a script of sorts, not to recite verbatim, but to help me stay focused when emotions ran high. She also recommended I document previous financial help I'd provided to have concrete examples if needed. Most importantly, she said, as our session ended, remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's healthy. You can love your family without being their bank. The next day I met Brandon for lunch. He looked nervous when he arrived, glancing around as if expecting his father to appear. Dad doesn't know I'm here, he confessed as he slid into the booth. He'd be mad if he knew. That confirmed my suspicions about Marcus's controlling behavior. We ordered food and I kept the conversation casual at first. School, his friends, his interests. Brandon gradually relaxed, and I was impressed by his thoughtfulness. He wasn't the entitled kid Marcus was raising him to be. There was a self-awareness there. So Westfield University, I said eventually. Is that where you want to go? Brandon stared at his half-eaten burger. It's where Dad wants me to go. He says it's the only way to make connections. What about you? If you could choose any school, what would you pick? He looked up, surprised by the question. Honestly, I'm really interested in computer science like what you do. Westfield's program is okay, but State University has a better tech program. But Dad says business is more practical. This was news to me. You're interested in programming? Brandon nodded enthusiastically. I've been teaching myself coding from online courses. I really enjoy it. Why haven't you mentioned this before? I tried, he said quietly. Dad shut it down, said there's no stability in computer jobs. I nearly laughed at the irony, my stable, well-paying tech career versus Marcus's string of failed business ventures. Brandon, the tech industry is one of the most stable and growing fields right now. We spent the next hour talking about programming, his projects, and his aspirations. It was the most genuine conversation I'd ever had with my nephew, and I realized with sadness how much I'd missed by allowing Marcus to control our interactions. Before we parted, I brought up what I'd discovered. Did you know that Westfield has scholarship opportunities you might qualify for, and that you could do 2 years at community college and transfer in with guaranteed admission if you maintain good grades? Brandon's eyes widened. Dad said there weren't any scholarships I could get, and he said community college would ruin my chances at a good career. That's not true, I said firmly. I started at community college. It's a smart financial decision, not a lesser option. As we were leaving, Brandon hesitated. Uncle Anton, there's something else you should know. The money Dad's asking you for, it's not just for school. What do you mean? Dad's behind on the rent again. He told me not to tell anyone, but I think he's planning to use some of the college money to catch up on bills. This revelation didn't surprise me, but it strengthened my resolve. Brandon, I'm not going to give your dad that money, but I will help you figure out how to pay for college the right way. And if you're serious about computer science, I'd be happy to mentor you. The gratitude in his eyes was worth more than any thanks I'd ever received from Marcus or my father. Over the next 2 weeks, I continued my preparations. I created a folder documenting every loan and gift I'd provided to my father and Marcus, over the years an amount that totaled over $40,000, none of which had been repaid. I drafted a clear statement of boundaries with Dr. Rivera's help. I even practiced potential confrontations with Derek role-playing as Marcus to help me prepare for the emotional manipulation tactics my brother would likely employ. I also reached out to my cousin Rachel, who had experienced similar treatment from the family, though to a lesser extent, and had successfully established boundaries years ago. She offered to attend the Christmas dinner as moral support. They'll try to isolate you, she warned, make you feel like you're the problem. Having an ally in the room can make all the difference. As Christmas approached, my confidence grew. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't dreading a family gathering because of what they might ask of me. Instead, I felt empowered, knowing that I was prepared to change the dynamic permanently. 2 days before Christmas, Marcus texted me, "Don't forget to bring your checkbook to dinner. Brandon's excited about getting his college sorted." I didn't respond, but I smiled at his presumption. Christmas was going to be very different this year. The day before Christmas brought a flurry of last-minute preparations and pointed communications from my family. My father called in the morning, his message thinly veiled. "We're looking forward to tomorrow," he said. "It's going to be a special day for the family. Brandon has some big news to share." "I'm sure he does," I replied neutrally. Family support is important. At times like these, Dad continued, his voice taking on that familiar lecturing tone. "Your mother always believed in investing in the next generation." The manipulation was so transparent now that I'd learned to recognize it. "I'll see you tomorrow, Dad," I said, ending the call before he could continue. Around noon, I drove to Brandon's house, knowing Marcus would be at his part-time retail job. I had a folder of information for Brandon's scholarship applications, community college transfer guides, and financial aid forms. But most importantly, I had news. Brandon answered the door, looking surprised to see me. "Uncle Anton, Dad's not here." "I know," I replied. "I came to see you." We sat at the kitchen table and I placed the folder in front of him. "I've been doing some research, Brandon. Did you know that State University has an early admission program for computer science students, and they offer merit scholarships based on coding projects, not just grades. His eyes widened as he flipped through the materials. These scholarships would cover almost everything. Exactly. And there's something else. I pulled out a printout of an email I'd received that morning. I reached out to a colleague who teaches in their CS department. He reviewed that game engine you built and was impressed. He wants you to apply and submit it as your project sample. Brandon stared at the email, then at me. You showed my project to a professor. I did, and he thinks you have real potential. For a moment, Brandon looked overwhelmed. Then his expression clouded. Dad will never go for this, he said on Westfield. Brandon, you're 17. In less than a year, you'll be an adult making your own decisions. Your father doesn't get the final say in your future. You don't understand, he said quietly. The situation with Dad is complicated. What do you mean? Brandon hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. He went to his room and returned with a shoebox. Inside were letters, college financial aid letters addressed to him. These came months ago. Dad intercepted them and told me we didn't qualify for anything. He handed me one from State University. This one offers a half-tuition scholarship for their computer science program. I only found these last week hidden in Dad's closet. I felt a surge of anger as I read the letter. Brandon had options, good ones that Marcus had deliberately hidden from him. There's more, Brandon continued. Remember when Grandpa gave me that $5,000 savings bond for college when I was 10? Dad cashed it out last year. He said it was for college applications, but I know we didn't spend that much. And Mom's parents set up a small college fund before they passed. That's gone too. The picture was becoming clearer. Marcus wasn't just trying to get me to pay for Brandon's education. He had already misappropriated funds specifically designated for that purpose. Brandon, this ends now, I said firmly. Tonight we're going to fill out these scholarship applications together, and I'm going to help you open a bank account tomorrow that only you can access. We spent the next 3 hours completing applications. Brandon was bright and capable, asking thoughtful questions about the process. I could see the programmer's mind in how he approached problems, methodically breaking them down into manageable parts. As we finished the last application, Brandon's phone buzzed repeatedly. Text messages from Marcus demanding to know where he was. I checked my watch. Marcus must have gotten off work early. Tell him you're with me, I suggested. We're just finishing up. Brandon texted his father, and the response was immediate, a phone call. I could hear Marcus yelling through the speaker. Brandon put it on speakerphone. What the hell are you doing with Anton? I told you to stay away from him until after Christmas. We're just hanging out, Dad. Brandon replied, his voice smaller than it had been all afternoon. Get home now. We need to talk about tomorrow. Actually, Marcus, I interjected calmly, Brandon and I are filling out scholarship applications. He'll be home in about 30 minutes. There was a moment of silence before Marcus spoke again, his voice artificially controlled. Anton, I thought we agreed that I would handle Brandon's college plans. We never agreed to that, I replied, and Brandon deserves to know all his options. You're undermining my authority as his father, Marcus hissed. This is exactly why Mom always said you were difficult. The old Anton would have been wounded by that reference to our mother. The new Anton recognized it as a deliberate attempt to manipulate me emotionally. We'll talk tomorrow, I said firmly. Brandon will be home soon. I ended the call despite Marcus's continued protests. Brandon looked pale. He's going to be furious, he said. Let him be, I replied. You haven't done anything wrong by exploring your options. I drove Brandon home, and as expected, Marcus was waiting on the front porch, his expression thunderous. I didn't get out of the car, simply waited until Brandon was safely inside before driving away. Marcus's glare followed me down the street. That evening I received a series of increasingly hostile texts from both Marcus and my father. Accusations of interfering, of trying to turn Brandon against his father, of disrespecting family hierarchy. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I reviewed my boundary document one last time and packed the folder of financial records I'd compiled. I laid out my clothes for the next day and tried to get some sleep, though rest was elusive. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. I felt a strange sense of peace as I prepared for the day ahead. For the first time in my adult life, I was approaching a family gathering not as someone to be used, but as someone with agency and self-respect. Whatever happened at dinner, I knew things would never be the same again, and I was ready. Christmas Day arrived with a crisp winter chill and clear blue skies. I dressed carefully in a navy sweater and gray slacks, casual but put together. The gifts I'd selected were thoughtfully wrapped: a leather-bound journal for Dad, a set of professional coding books for Brandon, and a gift card to Marcus's favorite restaurant. Modest but appropriate gifts, not the cash or expensive electronics they usually expected. My cousin Rachel texted that she'd meet me there. "Ready for Operation Family Boundary," she wrote with a supportive emoji. Her presence would be crucial as my ally in what promised to be a challenging afternoon. I arrived at my father's house precisely at 2 o'clock. Several cars were already parked outside, including Marcus's. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my gifts and the folder containing my documentation, then headed to the front door. Dad answered with a perfunctory hug. "You're right on time," he said, eyeing the modestly sized packages in my arms with barely concealed disappointment. The house smelled of roast turkey and pine from the decorated tree in the corner of the living room. Family members milled about my Aunt Sarah and her husband, 2 cousins, and their spouses, Rachel, who gave me an encouraging nod, and Brandon, who stood awkwardly near the fireplace, looking uncomfortable in a dress shirt that seemed too tight. At the collar, Marcus approached immediately, clapping me on the shoulder with forced joviality. "Little brother, Merry Christmas." His smile didn't reach his eyes, which darted to the gifts in my arms, and then back to my face. "Let's put those under the tree, shall we?" I surrendered the packages but kept the folder tucked under my arm. Marcus noticed his expression flickering briefly before resuming his host persona. "Everyone's almost here. Dad made eggnog extra strong this year." "I'll stick with water for now," I replied, suspecting they hoped to loosen my resolve with alcohol. The next hour was a study in underlying tension. On the surface, it was a typical family Christmas exchange of pleasantries, catching up on news, admiring the decorations. But I noticed the pointed comments, the meaningful glances between Marcus and my father, the way they kept steering conversations toward education and family support. "College is so expensive these days," Aunt Sarah remarked during an appetizer course. "How are you handling that with Brandon Marcus?" The question seemed innocent, but the timing was too perfect. I suspected she'd been prompted to bring it up. Marcus sighed dramatically. "It's challenging. Brandon got into Westfield, excellent school, excellent connections, but the financial part is tough since the divorce." "Family helping family is what matters," my father interjected, looking directly at me. "That's what the holidays are all about." I maintained a neutral expression, saying nothing. My silence clearly unnerved them. They were used to me jumping in with offers to help at the slightest prompt. By the time we sat down for dinner, the tension was palpable. Brandon kept his eyes on his plate, while Rachel occasionally squeezed my arm supportively. Marcus grew increasingly agitated, his forced cheerfulness becoming strained as his carefully orchestrated plan failed to produce results. Midway through the meal, Marcus stood to offer a toast, champagne glass in hand. To family, he began his gaze, sweeping the table but lingering on me. To supporting each other through life's journeys and investing in our futures. Speaking of futures, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a glossy brochure. "Brandon has some exciting news." All eyes turned to Brandon, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Marcus placed the Westfield University brochure on the table with a flourish. "Brandon's been accepted to Westfield's prestigious business program," Marcus announced proudly. "A huge opportunity that will set him up for life. We're so proud of him." Polite applause and congratulations followed. Brandon mumbled a thank you, not meeting anyone's eyes. "Of course," Marcus continued, his voice taking on a practiced tone of humility, "there are some financial considerations. College isn't cheap these days, especially quality education." This was it, the moment they'd been building toward. Marcus turned directly to me. "Anton, I believe you wanted to say something about Brandon's education. A special gift you were planning." The table fell silent. Every eye turned to me. This was exactly the public pressure scenario they had planned, put me on the spot in front of the entire family, making it nearly impossible to refuse without seeming selfish. I placed my water glass down carefully and met my brother's expectant gaze. Actually, I do have something to say. I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Brandon, I'm incredibly proud of your acceptance to Westfield. That's a significant achievement. Marcus smiled triumphantly, clearly assuming what would come next. But I won't be paying for it, I continued. The smile froze on his face. I've spent time with Brandon discussing his actual interests and aspirations, I went on. Did you all know he's an incredibly talented programmer? He's built his own game engine from scratch. He's been teaching himself coding for years. Brandon looked up, surprised that I was highlighting his achievements. Brandon's been offered a scholarship to State University's computer science program, I announced. A program that's actually ranked higher than Westfield's business school, in terms of job placement and starting salaries. Marcus's face reddened. That's not. It is true, I cut him off, turning to Brandon. Would you like to tell them about the scholarship, or should I? Brandon straightened in his chair, a new confidence in his posture. It's a half-tuition scholarship, he said, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. Based on a coding project I submitted. And there's a guaranteed internship component in the junior year. The table erupted in confused congratulations, family members looking between Marcus and Brandon uncertainly. This is the first I'm hearing about this, Marcus said, through clenched teeth. That's because you intercepted his financial aid letters, I replied calmly. Just like you cashed out the savings bond Grandpa gave him for college. Just like you emptied the account his maternal grandparents set up. Gasps and murmurs spread around the table. Marcus's face went from red to white. That's a lie, he sputtered. Anton is trying to turn my son against me. Is it a lie, Marcus? I opened the folder and placed Brandon's financial aid letters on the table. These were hidden in your closet. Brandon found them last week. My father intervened, his voice sharp. That's enough, Anton. This is Christmas dinner, not a courtroom. Whatever issues you have with your brother can be discussed privately. No, I said firmly. Not this time. For years, both of you have treated me as nothing more than a financial resource. I've given loans that were never repaid, covered expenses that weren't my responsibility, all while being made to feel it was my obligation, because I don't have children of my own. I placed a second document on the table, my itemized list of financial help I'd provided over the years. $43,000. That's how much I've given you too in the past 5 years alone. Not loaned, given, because despite promises to repay that money, never came back. You're embarrassing yourself, my father said coldly. This isn't how family behaves. Actually, Rachel interjected, this is exactly how healthy families should behave. With honesty and respect, not manipulation and exploitation. Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes jump. We're trying to secure my son's future. What kind of uncle refuses to help with his nephew's education? The kind who respects his nephew enough to help him find sustainable solutions rather than quick fixes, I replied. The kind who wants to mentor him in a field he's passionate about rather than pushing him into a path he doesn't want. I turned to the rest of the family. Did you know they planned this ambush weeks ago? I overheard them discussing how they would pressure me into paying at Christmas dinner, where I couldn't refuse in front of everyone. Uncomfortable glances were exchanged around the table. My father's jaw tightened. Your mother would be ashamed of you, he said, his ultimate weapon. I felt a pang but pushed through it. No, Dad. Mom would be ashamed of how you've treated me since she died. She wanted us to support each other, not exploit each other. Brandon stood up suddenly. I want to go to State for computer science, he announced. I'm sorry, Dad, but I do. I've been afraid to tell you because you never listened to what I want. Marcus looked at his son, as if seeing him for the first time. You can't be serious. After all I've done to get you into Westfield. All you've done, I echoed. You mean hiding his scholarship offers, spending his college savings, planning to use the money you demanded from me to pay your overdue rent. That last revelation caused another ripple of shock around the table. What followed was 20 minutes of chaos. Marcus alternated between rage and desperate attempts to salvage his plan. My father tried to reassert control of the situation through guilt and emotional manipulation. Some family members sided with them out of habit. Others sat in uncomfortable silence. Through it all, I remained calm, addressing each accusation with facts rather than emotion. Brandon found his voice standing his ground about his educational preferences, despite his father's protests. Finally, Marcus resorted to ultimatums. "If you go against me on this, don't expect any further support from me," he told me. "And that goes for the rest of you too," he added, looking around the table at those who had expressed support for my position. "I don't need your support, Marcus," I replied quietly. "I never did. What I needed was your respect, and you've never given that." I stood gathering my folder. "Brandon, my offer stands. I'll help you apply for additional scholarships, mentor you in programming, and if needed, help with reasonable expenses that your scholarships don't cover, provided the money goes directly to the school, not through your father." Marcus's face contorted with fury. "You're trying to steal my son." "No, Marcus. I'm trying to help him become his own man, not a reflection of you." My father pushed back from the table. "I think you should leave Anton." "I agree," I replied, surprisingly calm. "Merry Christmas, everyone." As I headed for the door, Brandon followed me. "Uncle Anton, wait." He hugged me tightly. "Thank you for believing in me." That moment made everything worthwhile. Rachel joined me and we walked out together, leaving behind the remains of a Christmas dinner, and perhaps the unhealthy family dynamic that had defined my life for too long. The days following Christmas were eerily quiet. No angry calls from Marcus, no guilt-tripping texts from my father. The silence was both unsettling and liberating, like the stillness after a violent storm. Rachel checked in regularly, reporting that family opinion was divided. Some relatives thought I had been unnecessarily harsh. Others admitted they'd witnessed the pattern of exploitation for years, but had never had the courage to address it. A week after Christmas, Brandon called. His voice was hushed, anxious. "Dad's barely speaking to me," he said. "The apartment is so tense I can hardly breathe." "I'm sorry, Brandon. This isn't your fault." "I know, but—" He hesitated. "Uncle Anton, is your offer to help me still open? Not just with college advice, but everything." "Of course it is," I assured him. "What do you need? Can I stay with you for a while?" "Just until things calm down. Dad's been talking about pulling me out of school, saying if I'm so smart with computers I don't need to finish high school." That evening, Brandon arrived at my condo with 2 duffel bags and his laptop. His eyes were red-rimmed, but he seemed relieved to be away from the tension. I set him up in my spare bedroom, and we established a routine. He would finish his senior year at his current school commuting from my place, while working on scholarship applications and coding projects in the evenings. 2 weeks after Christmas, my father finally called. His voice was gruff, reluctant. "Brandon seems to be staying with you," he said. Not quite a question. "Yes, for now. Until things settle down with Marcus." There was a long pause. "You made quite a scene at Christmas." I waited, saying nothing. "Marcus has been struggling since the divorce," he continued, his tone defensive. "More than he lets on." "I understand that, Dad. But it doesn't justify manipulating me or controlling Brandon's future." Another lengthy silence. Then, surprisingly, "Maybe not." It wasn't an apology, but coming from my father, it was significant. "Brandon's a good kid," I said. "Smart, thoughtful. He deserves a chance to pursue what he's passionate about." "Like you did," my father said quietly. "Yes, like I did, despite the lack of support." The conversation ended awkwardly, but without hostility. It was a small step, but a step nonetheless. Marcus took longer. For nearly a month, he refused to speak to either me or Brandon, communicating only through terse text messages about picking up additional clothing or school supplies. Brandon was hurt by his father's reaction, but also growing in confidence as he worked on his programming projects and received acceptance letters from several universities, including state, with an increased scholarship offer based on his latest work. In late January, Marcus showed up at my door unannounced. He looked tired, the bravado gone from his posture. "Can we talk?" he asked simply. Over coffee at my kitchen table with Brandon at school, Marcus struggled to articulate his position. I wanted the best for him, he insisted. Westfield would have given him connections I never had. Brandon doesn't need your connections, I replied. He needs to develop his own talents. Marcus stared into his coffee. Lauren's parents always said I didn't provide well enough. I wanted to prove them wrong through Brandon. It was the most honest thing my brother had ever shared with me. Brandon isn't your second chance, Marcus. He's his own person. Slowly, painfully, we began rebuilding a relationship based on more honest terms. Marcus agreed to family counseling with Brandon. He took financial management classes at the community center. He even found a better job with more regular hours, though his financial situation remained precarious. By spring, Brandon had decided on State University's computer science program. The scholarship covered 60% of his tuition. I helped with the rest, along with a part-time campus job Brandon found in the IT department. He moved into my spare bedroom permanently for the remainder of high school, with Marcus having regular visitation. My relationship with my father evolved as well. Our weekly dinners resumed, though, with a different dynamic. He no longer asked for money, and I no longer felt obligated to offer it. We talked more about real things, his health, my work, memories of my mother, that weren't weaponized as manipulation tactics. 6 months after that fateful Christmas dinner, the extended family gathered for a 4th of July barbecue at Rachel's house. The tension had dissipated, replaced by a new, more authentic type of interaction. Brandon proudly showed family members the app he was developing. Marcus discussed his new job without exaggeration or pretense. My father actually asked about my current projects with genuine interest. "You know," Rachel said as we watched the family from her patio, "I never thought I'd see this day. Actual healthy communication in this family." "It's still a work in progress," I acknowledged. "But progress is the key word," she pointed out. "You changed the dynamic for everyone, not just yourself." She was right. By standing up for myself, I had inadvertently created space for others to be more authentic too. Brandon was flourishing without the pressure to fulfill his father's thwarted ambitions. Marcus was slowly learning to live within his means rather than expecting bailouts. Even my father seemed less bitter, as if maintaining the favoritism had been its own kind of burden. As for me, the freedom from financial exploitation allowed me to explore parts of my life I'd neglected. I started dating again, meeting Elise, a graphic designer who respected boundaries and had a healthy relationship with her own family. I took up photography, a hobby I'd abandoned years ago due to time and money constraints. 1 year after the Christmas confrontation, we gathered at my condo for the holiday. It was smaller than my father's house, but comfortably fit our immediate family, plus Rachel and her husband. Brandon, now completing his first successful semester at State, helped me prepare dinner. Marcus brought a reasonable bottle of wine he'd actually paid for himself. My father carried in a small ham, his contribution to the meal. The gifts under my tree were modest but thoughtful. No one expected extravagance, and no one was disappointed. We ate and talked and even laughed, the conversation flowing naturally without underlying agendas. After dinner, as Brandon showed my father his latest coding project, Marcus pulled me aside. "I never properly thanked you," he said awkwardly. "For what?" "For helping Brandon. For seeing what he needed when I couldn't." He hesitated. "And for stopping the pattern I started. It wasn't fair what we were doing to you." Coming from Marcus, this was monumental. "We're family," I said. "Real support isn't about writing checks. It's about helping each other grow." Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat looking at my Christmas tree, reflecting on the journey of the past year. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to stop enabling destructive patterns. That Christmas wasn't the end of my family, just the end of being their ATM. And for the first time in my life, I finally felt like I was truly part of a family instead of just funding one. If you've ever been in a similar situation, struggling to set boundaries with family who see you as a financial resource, I hope my story gives you courage. Have you ever had to stand up to family expectations that weren't fair? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, true family support isn't measured in dollars, but in respect and genuine care. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in your own boundary-setting endeavors.